What is some of the key points that you would like somebody listening to really know so that they can really get some value from this CD?
I think a lot of salespeople tend to approach sales that it's really about doing things harder, making your sales team work harder, making more calls, building the metrics, and you can see it again and again happening throughout sales organisations around the world, really. Some people in the team aren't performing that well, so we start throwing in metrics. I want 15 appointments a week. I want to see 3 reports on my desk. I'm looking for a yardage here. I want to be able to measure the results. Now, I'm not knocking measuring results. What I am saying is that there's a balance between quantity and quality. Yeah, you need to measure your activity, and one of the most important things, you don't need a sales trainer to do this. It's if the most important thing that you do in your business is business development, and then my philosophy says it should be the first thing that you do every day. That's before you have a cup of coffee, that's before you have a sandwich, before you chat to people about what happened at the weekend, is that you start building into your organisation a culture. My belief is that you make 10 calls by 10 a.m. every day. And now they're phone calls, not to friends, relatives, accounts, but 10 phone calls to people you've never spoken to before. Now that frees up the rest of the day to get on with the rest of the business. And I can tell you that, and I've worked with a recent client. We ran a 2-day conference for them. When we went round the room, there's about 15 salespeople in the room, and the sales managers could give me the data and ask them how many prospective phone calls they had made in the past month. The total number that came back to me was about 35 phone calls. Right? At that point, I got them all to turn on their mobile phones, put them all in the corner, and they all went out and made 10 phone calls. Now, they made 150 outbound prospecting calls in half an hour, which had previously taken them a month to do. Now, you don't have to be a genius to work out sort of implications for your business if you can just build in that habit every day. Too many salespeople think that I need to be just doing hard sales all day, every day, and that'll kill you. You can't do that. That's just soul destroying. What you do need to do is set a certain time in the day, and my preference is first thing. Get it out of the way. As Brian Tracy says, eat the frog. Just find the biggest, ugliest thing in the day, get rid of it, and then move on. And 10 by 10, I can guarantee that most sales managers out there would be delighted if each person on their team were making 15 prospective phone calls a week. Sounds simple, but that has a huge impact.
So the schoolmaster was there. They went out like good boys and girls and made their calls. The proof of the pudding is whether they kept it up.
Absolutely. This is where the relationship between me and the management come in place. You can't expect any sales trainer to come into the room, introduce models, and then everyone changes their lives or has an epiphany and starts doing things differently. It requires an ongoing commitment, both in terms of systems design, KPIs in terms of job specifications, and the measures of success that are brought down by the owners, managers, or directors within the business. And so the easiest thing to do is to say, right, okay, before we do anything, this is the way we do things, this team. And I advise my clients to break that into groups of 4 or 5. Because then when there's people working as a culture of 4 or 5, they begin to expect that sort of thing to happen. There's nothing worse than a sales manager coming out of their office and opening the door and sticking their head outside the door, and it's silence. There's no noise. Or worse still, there's just the noise of all their sales team typing up long emails and proposals.
Yes,
writing all these wonderful prosaic documents that aren't going anywhere. There's nothing happier than a sales manager who sticks his head out the door and all he can hear is his salespeople having conversations with prospective customers. The client I'm referring to just secured their biggest ever contract just last week, which will transform their business. So that's the power of one phone call, what one phone call can do. I have another client who in the city, who one of their junior people selling photocopiers, a junior salesperson who had no preconception. It was a white piece of paper, a blank piece of paper in terms of me training, secured the biggest ever contract in the history of the organisation. Okay, and effectively wrote his budget twice over for this financial year. I've been meeting with him because his challenge now is to stay motivated
Right.
to do things even bigger and better.